He walked into that room, already defeated. You could see it in the way his shoulders slumped, in the way his eyes never quite met anyone else's, in the way his hands stayed folded like he was trying to make himself smaller. He wasn't angry, he wasn't loud, he wasn't making excuses, he was quiet. And that kind of quiet tells a story all by itself. Most people think when they come into a courtroom, the only thing waiting for them is punishment. They think the gavel is about to come down, and when it does, their future comes down with it. They believe one mistake defines who they are. They believe one bad decision is the whole story of their life. But life is bigger than one moment. He thought he was going to jail. That was written all over his face. He had already sentenced himself before anyone else could. Maybe someone once told him he would never be anything more than his worst day. Maybe life had already been harder on him than it ever needed to be. Maybe he was just tired. Tired of struggling, tired of explaining, tired of hoping. He stood there waiting for the words that would take something away from him. But sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is not take something away. It's to give something back. Because behind every case number is a human being, not a file, not a record, not a charge. A person who wakes up with worries, a person who carries responsibilities, a person who is trying, even if they don't always get it right. And when you look at a person instead of a mistake, something changes. This wasn't about ignoring the law. This wasn't about pretending the rules don't matter. The rules matter. They protect people. They create order. They keep things fair. But justice is more than rules. Justice is understanding how those rules meet real life. Real life has bills that pile up. Real life has family members depending on you. Real life has days when you're doing your best just to stay standing. Sometimes people don't need a cage to become better. Sometimes they need a chance to breathe, a chance to fix things, a chance to walk out of that room feeling like they still belong in this world. So instead of words that would close doors, he heard words that opened them. Words that said, "You are more than this moment." Words that said, "Your future is not over today." Words that said, "Go home, do better, and prove that this wasn't who you really are." And when he left that room, he didn't walk out the same way he walked in. His back was straighter. His eyes were brighter. His steps were lighter. Not because he got away with something, but because he was trusted with something. He was trusted with his own second chance. And that kind of trust can change a life. Because when someone believes in you, at the moment you least believe in yourself, something powerful happens inside your heart. You start to believe you can do better. You start to believe you can be better. You start to believe that your story isn't finished yet. That is what justice can look like. Not just punishment, but purpose. Not just rules, but redemption. Not just a verdict, but a turning point. He came in expecting his life to shrink. He walked out carrying the possibility of something bigger. And sometimes that makes all the difference. People walk into a courtroom carrying more than just paperwork. They carry fear, regret, confusion, and a long list of moments they wish they could redo. By the time they stand in front of the bench, many of them have already decided who they are. They label themselves as failures, as problems, as people who always mess things up. They believe the story of their life has already been written by a single bad chapter. That belief weighs heavier than any fine, any charge, any punishment. It bends their shoulders, lowers their eyes, and quiets their voice. They stop seeing themselves as a whole human being and start seeing themselves only as their mistake. A mistake feels permanent when you are standing in its shadow. It feels like a stamp that cannot be removed, like a mark that will follow you everywhere. People start thinking that everyone who looks at them can see that mark. They imagine that every door is already closing, that every opportunity is already slipping away. Even before a decision is made, they begin to grieve the life they think they have lost. They replay the moment again and again, wishing they could go back just a few minutes, just a few seconds, and choose differently. That replay becomes a loop, and inside that loop, they forget all the good they have done, all the responsibilities they have carried, all the people they have helped, all the times they have tried. But a single moment cannot contain a whole life. A person is not the worst thing they have ever done. A person is not the angriest word they have ever said, the poorest decision they have ever made, or the day they felt most lost. A life is made of thousands of mornings, thousands of choices, thousands of small actions that never make it into any record. It is made of sacrifices no one sees, of worries that are never spoken out loud, of efforts that quietly keep families together and dreams alive. Reducing all of that into one mistake is not truth. It is a distortion created by fear. Fear has a way of shrinking people. It tells them their future has already been decided. It whispers that they are not worth trusting again. It convinces them that trying again will only lead to more disappointment. Over time, That fear becomes heavier than the original mistake. It changes how people walk, how they speak, how they think. They start to expect failure, and when you expect failure, you often stop giving yourself the chance to succeed. Every person who has ever grown has done so because they were allowed to learn. Learning means falling, misjudging, misunderstanding, and sometimes hurting themselves or others along the way. Growth is messy. It does not happen in straight lines. It happens in steps forward and steps back. It happens through reflection, regret, and resolve. Without room to make mistakes, there is no room to become better. Without forgiveness, there is no space for transformation. Some mistakes come from carelessness. Some come from desperation. Some come from exhaustion. Some come from confusion. Life puts people in situations they were never trained to handle. Bills pile up, families depend on them, emotions overwhelm them, and choices are made in moments of pressure that they would never choose in moments of peace. That does not excuse wrongdoing, but it does explain humanity. It explains why good people sometimes make bad choices, and why one moment should not be allowed to erase every other part of their story. When people are only shown punishment, they often learn to see themselves only as problems. When they are shown understanding, they begin to see themselves as people who can improve. The difference between those two views can determine whether someone repeats a mistake or rises above it. Shame traps people in the past. Hope pulls people into the future. Shame says, "You are what you did." Hope says, "You are what you choose to become next." Being given another chance is not about escaping responsibility. It is about being trusted with responsibility. It is about being reminded that you still matter, that your future still has value, that your actions from this point forward still count. That reminder can be more powerful than any warning. It reaches places inside the heart that fear never can. It invites people to stand taller, to think more carefully, to protect what they have been given. Many people remember forever the moment someone chose to believe in them when they felt least worthy of belief. That moment becomes a turning point. It becomes a quiet promise they make to themselves that they will not waste that trust. They begin to notice their choices more. They pause before reacting. They weigh consequences with a clearer mind. They become more aware of how their actions affect others. That inner shift does not happen because they were threatened. It happens because they were seen. Life is not a straight path of perfection. It is a long road of learning, correcting, and growing. Every person you admire has failed at something. Every success story has moments that could have gone differently. What separates those who grow from those who stay stuck is not the absence of mistakes, but the presence of reflection and the opportunity to change direction. When people are allowed to correct themselves, they often do so with gratitude and determination. A mistake can be a warning sign, but it does not have to be a life sentence. It can be a signal to slow down, to rethink, to rebuild. It can become the very moment that wakes someone up to the direction they are heading. It can be the beginning of a stronger, wiser version of themselves. But that only happens when the door to the future remains open. Everyone carries invisible battles. Everyone has moments they wish they could erase. Everyone has choices they regret. Yet everyone also carries the ability to do better tomorrow than they did yesterday. That ability does not disappear because of one poor decision. It does not vanish because of one bad day. It waits quietly for the chance to be used. When people are given the chance to walk forward instead of being pushed backward, they often rise to meet it. They rebuild trust through consistency. They repair relationships through effort. They strengthen their character through discipline. Over time, their past mistake becomes just one small part of a much larger story of improvement, responsibility, and growth. The idea that one mistake defines a life is a heavy burden to place on any human being. It denies the complexity of who we are and the potential of who we can become. A life is too valuable, too layered, too meaningful to be summarized by a single moment. A person is still in the process of becoming, still capable of change, still worthy of moving forward. Compassion is often misunderstood. Many people think it is softness, weakness, or a way of ignoring rules. They imagine it as something that lets people escape responsibility or avoid consequences. But compassion is not about removing accountability. It is about adding humanity to accountability. It is the difference between correcting someone and crushing them. It is the difference between teaching a lesson and leaving a scar that never heals. When a person is treated only as a problem, they begin to think of themselves as a problem. They stop seeing their value. They stop believing they have something meaningful to contribute. Over time, that belief shapes their behavior. If you believe you are already written off, you stop trying to prove otherwise. You stop investing in your future. You stop imagining yourself as someone who can rise above your circumstances. Compassion interrupts that cycle. It reminds people that they are more than their worst day. It tells them that their life still has purpose. It tells them that they are still seen as a human being, not just a case, a number, or a mistake. That reminder can quietly rebuild what fear and shame have torn down inside a person's heart. Shame makes people hide. Compassion makes people reflect. Shame makes people defensive. Compassion makes people open. Shame creates walls. Compassion opens doors. When people feel judged, they protect themselves. They justify their behavior, deny responsibility, or withdraw emotionally. When people feel understood, they are more willing to admit what they did wrong, to take responsibility, and to consider change. Real transformation does not start with fear. It starts with awareness. It starts when a person looks at their actions honestly and sees the impact they had on others. Compassion creates the safe space where that honest reflection can happen. It allows someone to acknowledge their mistakes without feeling that their entire identity is being attacked. In that space, growth becomes possible. Every person carries struggles that are invisible to the world: financial pressure, family responsibilities, emotional pain, loneliness, anxiety, grief, and exhaustion influence the choices people make. Sometimes those pressures push people into decisions they would never make if they were thinking clearly, resting well, and feeling supported. Compassion does not erase responsibility, but it recognizes the reality of those pressures. It recognizes that people are not robots. They are human beings reacting to complex situations. When someone experiences compassion at a moment when they expected only judgment, it often becomes a turning point in their life. That moment lingers in their memory. It becomes the moment they realize someone still believed in them. That belief can quietly reshape how they see themselves. They start to imagine a different version of their future. They begin to think more carefully about their next choices. They become more aware of the example they are setting for their children, their family, and their community. Compassion also carries a message of trust. It says you are capable of doing better. It says your future is still worth investing in. That message can awaken responsibility more effectively than punishment alone. When people feel trusted, they often work harder to protect that trust. They think twice before repeating a mistake. They take steps to correct what they did wrong. They seek help, advice, and guidance instead of hiding. There is a quiet dignity in being treated with compassion. It restores a sense of self-respect. It reminds people that their life still matters, that they are still part of society, that they still have a place in the world. That restored dignity can become the foundation for lasting change. People who respect themselves are more likely to respect others. People who feel valued are more likely to act responsibly. Compassion also has a ripple effect. When one person is treated with understanding, they often pass that understanding forward. They become more patient with others. They become more aware of how their words and actions affect people. They become more willing to help instead of judge. Over time, this creates communities that are not only safer, but also kinder and more supportive. Punishment can stop behavior for a moment. Compassion can change behavior for a lifetime. Punishment can create compliance. Compassion can create character. One controls actions through fear. The other reshapes choices through awareness and responsibility. Lasting change grows from the inside, not from pressure applied from the outside. When people walk away from a moment of compassion, they often walk away differently. Their posture changes. Their voice softens. Their eyes lift. They feel lighter, not because they escaped consequences, but because they were reminded of their worth. That reminder becomes a quiet promise they make to themselves to do better, to live more carefully, to protect the second chance they were given. Transformation is not loud. It does not happen all at once. It begins with a shift in how a person sees themselves. Compassion initiates that shift. It replaces hopelessness with possibility. It replaces self-blame with responsibility. It replaces fear with determination. The world often teaches people that mistakes make them disposable. Compassion teaches people that mistakes make them human. That lesson changes how people treat themselves and others. It encourages patience, reflection, and growth. It creates room for people to learn, to repair, and to become stronger versions of themselves. A future shaped by compassion is not a future without rules. It is a future where rules are applied with understanding. It is a future where accountability walks hand in hand with humanity. It is a future where people are not reduced to their worst moment, but are encouraged to rise beyond it. When compassion enters a person's story, it does not erase what happened. It reframes what happens next. It turns a moment of failure into an opportunity for growth. It turns fear into motivation. It turns shame into self-awareness. It turns regret into resolve. It turns uncertainty into direction. A single compassionate moment can quietly alter the course of a life. It can influence decisions, relationships, habits, and self-perception. It can become the reason someone chooses a better path when no one is watching. It can become the reason someone believes they are still capable of becoming more than their past. Second chances arrive quietly. They do not come with fireworks or announcements. They come in simple moments when a door stays open instead of closing, when a voice chooses understanding instead of condemnation, when someone is allowed to walk forward instead of being pushed backward. These moments may seem small from the outside, but inside a person's life they can be enormous. They can become the turning point where everything begins to change. Many people walk through life believing they are already defined. They believe their past has written their future. They believe their mistakes are permanent labels that cannot be removed. That belief shapes how they think, how they act, and how they treat themselves. It lowers expectations. It limits effort. It convinces people to accept less than what they are capable of becoming. A second chance interrupts that belief and introduces a new possibility into their thinking. When someone is given another opportunity, it sends a powerful message that their life is still worth investing in. It tells them they are still seen, still valued, still capable of contributing something meaningful to the world. That message can awaken a sense of responsibility that fear alone never could. It reminds them that their future is not over, and that reminder can change how they make choices from that moment forward. A second chance creates space for reflection. It gives people time to think about what went wrong, why it happened, and how they want to live differently. It invites them to look honestly at their habits, their priorities, and their influences. In that space, growth begins. Not all change is immediate, but awareness is the first step toward improvement. Without space to reflect, people remain trapped in reaction. With space, they can begin to respond with intention. Trust is a powerful motivator. When someone is trusted with another chance, they often feel a quiet obligation to honor that trust. They become more careful. They become more thoughtful. They become more aware of the consequences of their actions. They start to think not only about what they want in the moment, but about what they want their life to look like in the long term. That shift in thinking is where transformation truly begins. Second chances also restore dignity. They help people lift their heads again. They remind them that they still belong, that they are not permanently excluded, that they still have a place in their family, their community, and their future. Dignity strengthens self-respect, and self-respect strengthens self-control. People who respect themselves are more likely to protect their future with wiser choices. A second chance can become a new starting point. It allows people to rewrite their daily routines, their relationships, and their habits. It gives them permission to choose differently the next time they face a similar situation. Over time, these small changes accumulate into a completely different life direction. What once felt like a single moment of mercy becomes the foundation for a long pattern of responsibility. The power of a second chance is not only in what it allows someone to escape, but in what it invites them to become. It invites them to step into a better version of themselves. It encourages them to take ownership of their actions. It challenges them to rise above their past and prove through consistent behavior that growth is real. Many people who receive second chances carry that moment with them forever. They remember how they felt, the fear they carried, the relief they experienced, and the promise they silently made to themselves. That memory becomes a compass. It guides their decisions. It reminds them what they could have lost and what they are now determined to protect. It becomes a quiet voice that speaks to them when they are tempted to repeat old patterns. Second chances also influence how people treat others. When someone has been shown grace, they often become more patient, more understanding, and more compassionate. They become less quick to judge and more willing to listen. They recognize that everyone is carrying something unseen. This creates ripple effects that extend far beyond one person's life. A life changed by a second chance often becomes a story of service, responsibility, and quiet leadership. People begin to set better examples for their children, their friends, and their co-workers. They become proof that change is possible. Their growth becomes a message without words that encourages others to believe in their own ability to improve. Second chances do not erase the past, but they change its meaning. Instead of being a source of shame, the past becomes a reminder of how far someone has come. It becomes a lesson that strengthens wisdom and humility. It becomes the contrast that makes progress visible. The future built on a second chance is shaped by daily decisions. It is shaped by patience, discipline, and awareness. It is shaped by a deeper understanding of consequences and a stronger appreciation for opportunities. It is shaped by gratitude for what was given and determination to honor it. A second chance is not simply about avoiding punishment. It is about embracing responsibility. It is about choosing growth over comfort. It is about protecting a renewed sense of purpose. It is about walking forward with intention rather than drifting backward into old habits. When people are given room to change, many of them do, they rise to meet the opportunity placed in front of them. They discover strengths they did not know they had. They develop habits they never thought they could maintain. They build lives that look nothing like the lives they were once afraid they were destined to live. A second chance can be the beginning of a completely different story. It can redirect paths, repair relationships, and restore hope. It can awaken purpose and reinforce discipline. It can become the moment that someone points to years later and says, "That was where everything changed."